Hello everyone, my name is Singh and I am a recruitment specialist and a communications coach. And today's session is going to be a very unique and different one because today we are going to talk about guesstimates. Now I run a program called Future Skills to Boost Employability where we train students from colleges, universities, MBA schools to help them get great corporate jobs. Now over the last few years, one category of questions have become extremely popular, and this category is guesstimates. Now what is guesstimates? A question such as how many cups of coffee were sold in Mumbai yesterday? How many cubes of ice cream were sold in Hyderabad last month? How much petrol was consumed in New Delhi last week? On the first look, guesstimates look questions which are practically impossible to solve, and that is where the students commit the first cardinal sin, that they try to think that guesstimates is all about doing the right kind of calculation. Yes, numbers are very important. The answer which should be coming out from your side should be more or less in the ballpark range. However, in today's class, I'll try to take one specific example, which is an actual case asked in a consultancy firm at one of the famous colleges at Delhi University. And through that, I'll try to demonstrate to you that guesstimates is not just about answers, but it's a 5-step process. So let us start our journey today, where I like to give you the Vasco framework of solving guesstimates through a 5-step approach. And the example which we will take today is a type of guesstimate which we call capacity estimate guesstimate. That how much is the maximum capacity of any specific equipment or any specific device, or how many maximum number of things can you fit in any specific vessel. So the question coming for today is how many tennis balls can you fit in an aeroplane? As I said earlier, an actual question asked by a very reputed multinational consultancy firm at one of the reputed Delhi University colleges. When such a question is asked, I want you to take a few seconds and think that what would be your first reaction. The first reaction which every student must give to this kind of a question is start to think. Now you will say, sir, that's a cliche, obviously we have to think. However, I am talking about the art of visualization. So the first step is to visualize that what are the objects involved. The question is how many tennis balls can you fit in an aeroplane. So just for a few seconds try to think that what are the objects involved. In this case, obviously an aeroplane. How big? How small? What are the interiors? Is it completely empty? Is it completely loaded? What size of aeroplane are we talking about? Because based on the size of the aeroplane, the number of balls that we can fit could vary drastically. Second variable, tennis ball. Is it lawn tennis? Or is it table tennis? Or is it squash tennis? Depending on what kind of size of the ball we are talking, the answer could again drastically vary. So these are the kind of things which you must start visualizing. Of course, you must start by telling your interviewer that, sir, I'll be happy to answer that. However, is it fine that I can have a few seconds to structure my thoughts and then start visualizing? What else would you like to visualize? Let's go ahead. You may want to be visualizing as to the method of loading. How are you going to load? Are you going to actually put the tennis balls in box and load them up? Or you will ask the interviewer a very smart question which makes the challenges of loading irrelevant to the problem. And you may say, sir, may I assume for simplification that there is a hole at the roof of the plane, or we can drill a hole at the roof of the plane and simply pour down the balls for maximum efficiency? What you have demonstrated to the interviewer over here is that you have a sensitivity to think about numerous variables, the resources which are needed to accomplish this task. But the journey to visualize hasn't stopped. The next thing to visualize and think about is the intention. So probably your first question may be, so what is the intention? Is there any specific number of balls that you wish to carry on the plane, or may I go ahead and actually start calculating the maximum number which are theoretically possible to be fitted in the plane? The journey of visualization has not yet stopped. And the next variable over here is mathematics. Which most important mathematical formula or dimension is the correct one in this case? Of course, some may say dia, some may say cross-sectional surface area. However, no prizes for guessing that in this case, the most basic principle would be volume of the plane space divided by volume which a ball is going to occupy. However, while you are thinking that, you need to refine it iteratively. That you may want to introduce in the denominator a packaging space inefficiency factor, because you are going to lose some amount of volume as the balls are spherical, not a cube or a cuboid. So they will leave certain vacuum which is air. And the third thing is the final iteration where you would like to add some inefficiency of loading, the process of loading. However, in this situation, depending on how you are consulting with the interviewer, you may ask the interviewer, so since I am assuming that we will simply pour down the balls from the top, I am going to ignore this element. So this paraphernalia of the first V of Vasco about visualization encourages you to think about all the variables which are relevant and at play. Remember, Guesstimate is a test of your quick thinking ability, your ability to structure problems and then coherently communicate. And in your ability to structure the problem, you may not be able to do that so long as you are not fitting it all the missing links. So in the first V, when you are visualizing, you are just trying to think that what are the variables at play over here. So let me now give you the 5 steps of Vasco. And the first one, as I've already explained in detail, is the ability to think and to visualize all the variables so that you can find out what are the missing links, what are the elements where certain assumptions may be needed, and what are the elements which by simplification you can ignore, but with the permission of the interviewer. The A stands for ask questions. The consultancy firms, the investment banks which are going to interview you are going to actually check your ability to quickly come up with right kind of questions, because in front of a client these kind of guesstimates are things which you'll actually be doing day in, day out. The nature of questions will be different. However, the genre is likely to be very similar. So ask questions to narrow down the scope. What kind of questions to ask? We'll talk about that just in a short while. Third one, structure. As I said earlier, and I quote a very classical example of a very high ranker student of a famous US university who was asked, how much does United States spend on its barber industry for haircutting, salons? And that brilliant boy, a 780 GMAT ranker, kept on calculating for the next 2-3 minutes and then said, so about 24,386,500,000 US dollars, give or take a margin of error of 5%. The answer was mathematically correct, but the boy was eventually rejected. Why? Because in guesstimates, just being able to give the right answer at the end of the journey is something which is not the only thing which is being tested. I am saying this again and again. It's about communication, connecting, consultation. Therefore, your ability to make a very beautiful logical structure on a plain A4 sheet without too much cutting is something which will show to the consultant who is interviewing you as to how logical and how naturally fluid and smooth your flow of thoughts are. Then comes calculation. Now, calculations are important and most of the times you will not be allowed to use a calculator. However, what you need to bear in mind is this is not a test of your mathematical calculation abilities, but rather a test of your logic. So in my experience, over the 1 million interviews I took all over my academic and professional career later on, I tend to believe that there is a greater value which an interviewer places on the rationale and the logic of relative assumptions that you take, not the absolute number. So I'm going to talk about that in just a while. And finally, O stands for another method. A lot of times at the end of the session, the consultant or the interviewer is likely to ask you, all right, now can you cross-verify your number with an alternate or another method? So how do you try to master the Vasco framework? We'll demonstrate using this non-tennis ball example. So step 2, ask the questions. Ask questions to find the missing link. So in this case, going back to our how many tennis balls in an aeroplane example. Plane, how big, how empty? Is it a huge Dreamliner? Is it a 737? What size of the plane? Is it a small chartered plane? Tennis ball, is it a lawn tennis ball? Is it a table tennis ball? How big? Is it inflated? Is it deflated? What about the packaging? You may, as I said earlier, want to talk and ask the interviewer about loading. Is it through a normal door? Is it through the conventional baggage route? Or we could pour down the balls from the top. However, the very vital factor which we like to tell you is the art of asking not open-ended questions but suggestive questions. Now, what do suggestive questions mean? In my program Future Skills, we'll be explaining and training you in all of this very thoroughly, but as a very simple definition, suggestive questions are closed-ended leading questions where you expect that the answer as a yes from the interviewer is likely to make your calculation easier. So instead of asking, sir, should I assume a big plane or a small plane? Sir, should I assume a Dreamliner, or sir, should I assume a 6-seater? You actually suggest to the interviewer, sir, is it fine if I were to assume this category of plane? Sir, would it be okay if I go with this as assumption? Sir, may I take this method? So ask suggestive questions which will make your calculation easier. So 5 golden questions in this scenario. So, may I assume the plane to be the typical 737 which flies Delhi Mumbai on domestic route? Second question. So, may I, for simplification, assume that entire plane space is available? Third question. So, may I, for simplification, assume that pilot cockpit zone is also available to load the balls? Fourth. So, may I assume the plane shape to be a perfect cylinder, just for simplification? And finally, about loading, that may I assume we can drill a hole at the top and simply pour down the balls for maximum efficiency. Now, what have you done over here? Irrespective of whatever answer you come up with, because many a times your answer may not be the very precise answer, at least you have displayed to the interviewer your ability to think vast variables, then ask the relevant questions to narrow down the scope. And then you could actually get very good marks if you are clear with the structure. So you could simply say, sir, that I am going to structure the problem, that I calculate the volume of the plane. I will then calculate the volume of a tennis ball, which in this case I am going to assume a non-tennis ball, and I am going to take a marginal packing inefficiency factor, which you could just suggest, sir, is it fine if I were to take 10% packing inefficiency? So I am going to multiply that denominator by 1.1. In my experience, if you can do these 3 steps right, you are already somewhere where you have got about 7.5 to 8 marks out of 10. Of course, it could vary company to company, and some companies would really want the perfect answer. However, more often than not, so long as you have done the 3 stages, V for visualization, A for asking question, and S for evolving the structure, a major portion of the task is done. Then, of course, comes to calculation, and I'm not going to spend time on this. Now, you may actually have your simplification, but you should brush up the basic formulas. For example, you should be knowing volume of a sphere is 4 by 3 pi r cube. And I have heard so many students from commerce background, sir, We had commerce in 11th and 12th, so we are not supposed to know these formulas. But my dear students, most of these formulas which the consultants are likely to ask you are the ones which you have studied in class. Can you guess? 7th, 8th, 9th. So please brush up the formulas. So you calculate the volume of the plane. Then, of course, you assume its length, which I am going to talk about a little while later. You calculate the overall volume by using the simple formula. And finally, you divide the volume of the plane divided by the volume of the ball to come up with the answer, which in this case comes approximately 2 million. So you will think that's a job done. But no, my dear friends, the interviewer is quite likely to ask you, can you please give me some method by which you can cross-verify whether your number is broadly in the correct ballpark range. Now in this, first of all, please remember the interviewer is not asking you to design an entirely new method, but just he or she wants a ballpark verification. And this cross-check need not be that detailed. But yes, your criteria of calculation should be very logically stated, and most important, if the two numbers don't match, do not panic, but just remain very cool-headed, calm-headed, and through your quick thinking, come up with reasons why the two numbers are not matching. So here I like to give you a technique called indexation. Indexation is a technique by which you avoid long speculative guesses. You don't want to take a long shot or shoot in the dark. You want to choose a unit which you can visualize. So take a basic unit where that particular object can be fitted. So that would be X. Then please calculate how many total such basic units are there, which will be Y. And then multiplying X by Y will give you your idea of how many of those items could be fitted. Now in the context of a plane, there is no gainsaying the fact that volume is the perfect criteria for this calculation. But since the interviewer has asked you to think of another approach, let us think of another one. While there could be numerous, but I decided to take an Almirah cross-sectional approach, which means one entire seat row of an area cross-section of an aeroplane from one end of the seat to the other end of the seat. To give a pictorial reflection, it is something like this, that I am assuming this entire seat from the seat A till F is something where we are loading the balls all the way from the floor to the roof. So we have made almost 35 almirahs, assuming that the total length was 35 meters and each almirah was 1 meter long. Now, the calculation to do our cross check goes something like this. We assume a typical packaging unit that how many balls could be in a particular box. We then make a guesstimate that how many such packs can we load on a seat. We then try to calculate that from seat A to F, how many total such boxes could be placed. Then all the way from the front pilot cockpit till the end, how many such potential almirahs could be loaded, and then multiply to get the number. However, do not forget one vital thing. The baggage space which is below the floor needs to be assumed by a multiple factor. Now it may all look easy when I am telling you this, and it's quite likely that when you are in the interview, the correct numbers may not come to your mind. So as I said earlier, the logical soundness of your assumptions is going to play a bigger role over here than anything else. So without taking much time, I just assume that a typical pack should have 36 balls. In one seat, we could fit 100 packs, and in one row, we would therefore have 1000 such packs, which means 36,000 balls, 35 such almirahs, so 1.26 million, and a 1.5 multiplier for the cargo space gives us a number of about 2 million. Now in this case, the numbers are tallying, but quite a few of the times the numbers may not tally. Now let's assume that the number here was not 2 million, it may have been like 4 million. So then the interviewer is likely to ask you that your two numbers are not tallying, so what are you supposed to do? So then you come up with a logical ballpark kind of a referral saying, sir, I presume that I have assumed 36 tennis balls, but probably the estimate that I am taking of how much space it will occupy on a seat may be slightly on the lesser side. So I would presume that my answer is coming 3 million, 4 million, because I am losing about 15 to 20% of accuracy by assuming a box to have occupied lesser space. The second thing is that I am not sure that how much is the cargo space multiplier. I have assumed 1.5, it's possible it will be 1.25. So more or less, sir, my answer would be the ballpark range of about 2 to 3 million. Most of organizations should accept that as a very logical approach. However, as I cautioned you in the beginning, depending on companies, certain consultancy firms are extremely punctilious and very particular that your number should be matching to the dot. However, in my experience at most organizations, they will be flexible on the final number so long as it's in the broad ballpark range. So that ends our video, and as I'm ending it, I'm giving you a wrap up that once again I want you to be sure that guesstimate is not just about the number. It's a 5-step process where the interviewer is testing you on your ability to visualize all the variables involved in the problem. You are being evaluated on your ability to ask the right questions to fill in the missing links. You are being evaluated on your ability to structure the problem and give it a logical flow. You are being evaluated on your ability to calculate, but not just the mathematical one, the logical soundness of the assumptions you are making, and finally, your ability to quickly come up with another way, an alternative method, another method to verify. Well, so for more such guesstimate, for more such recruitment preparations, I request you all to please enroll for our program. I personally take all the classes. The name of the program is Future Skills to Boost Employability. It's about 2.5 to 3 months journey. And for those of you who like my video, may I request you to please go to our channel, Gagan's Winning at Persona program. We have various videos on GDs, interviews, VAT, English, case studies. Please view them, please like them, and please subscribe. Thank you so much. May God bless you, and may the power of winning at Persona ever be with you. This is Gagan Singh signing for the day. Thank you.